of your popular baits and giving us a little, maybe a little history on them, or some tips, or stuff that people would want to hear. And considering it is one of the most high demand, and everybody seems to be loving it right now, the slapstick. What's the story with that thing? Let us know. And also, it's an interesting way that to rig it. And I've had several people ask us, how should we really rig this thing correctly? And so, yeah, give us a little rundown on the whole slapstick.
Okay, so over the years, I have had my thinking about lure fishing has fallen into a couple of different categories. And growing up, um, one of my favorite captains, Mike Christie, always told me that it was his theory was flash and glow. And flash and glow, um, to me, falls into two categories. So one is the things that are the most reflective, the brightest, they have the most light attraction. And I kind of built my entire line of fishing lures around mirrors, dichroic glass, things that have that kind of eminent glow and flash, no matter where you see them in the spread or what position they're in the water. Big believer in that. And then the other whole family is realism. And so things that actually represent and look just like a bait fish. They look just like something that would be natural, whether it's being trolled or it's on the sink. Because so often you hook a fish and you slow down a little. And so if you still have baits out, especially meat fishing, you're not bringing everything in usually. You have lures that are still in the water and there still should be fishing. And so that's where things like Magic Malolo and my Ninjas, they still have that lifelike quality that I think will get them a bite even on a slower troll. And so they have that functionality. The last few years, last 4 or 5 years, I started getting into actual lifelike molding of fish, and we've seen this. A lot of lure makers are exploring this craft, and we have some really great, beautiful, incredible work being done by like John Niyama and his fish heads. Kona Lures has got some great pieces, and then for me, it was a natural offshoot from the Ninja to have something, and I think I've been working on it for about 30 years, trying to get things that were actually lifelike bait fish. So I exploring all this molding. I had a couple of great successes, and one of the first ones was a small Malolo that I molded. So for people who are looking at these lures and they're excited about maybe even trying the molding process themselves, I can tell you there's a huge failure rate. And so when we see these beautiful products that come out that are actually molded fish, there's probably been 10 or 12 attempts to get to that one good mold or to get to that one good piece. And so I've had some successes, but many failures. And that small Malolo was one of my first successes, and it became now the slapstick because that shape was perfect. And for those, if you examine it really closely, it has some elements that I really like that actually I won't go into detail on because I think people need to just try it and see how it works. But I started making them about 4 years ago. Kenton's the first one to get them. I knew in his commercial fishing he would have opportunities to really test them and see what they did. It's a whole new theory to have a real long bait, because longer baits sometimes can be less effective. You're creating more bite surface that doesn't have a hook in it. But for me, the perfection of the slapstick is that it's small, it's easy to swallow, and it looks like a living thing. And in the testing that Kenton did, he proved time and time again this thing just gets bit. And so even though uh, he goes to places where the fishing, the seamounts off of our islands here, they're 100 miles away. The fishing is incredible. The fisheries are strong. you can drag anything and probably get a bite. But what was impressive is that he was getting the time to drag these, the slapsticks and some of the other testing products that I give him to run and see what they do out in the deep water, in the blue water, where you don't get as many bites. And people would think, you're out there in the ocean, you're 100 miles from shore, there's fish everywhere. But the ocean is a vast desert. And then you find places that are specifically alive. And you have, especially where you have sea mountains or you have traveling schools of fish, but there's a lot of desert out there. So when you have a lure that's successful out in the deep blue, when you're out just kind of traveling, um, that's a win, and that's a good mark, or we'll give that a star. And then some of the applications that he was able to use the slapstick for were really kind of cool to me too, because we didn't have a direction for it in the beginning. I had to put actually a wing on it, and it was a bird. And the wing didn't last very long, but it still kept getting bites on the troll. But then he took it and he was using it as a toss-in bait for his chum lines. And so he'd have basically the school of fish pollued up under the boat. Then they throw a little bit of chum into the water, or palu, and get the fish to come up to the surface, and he could toss, because of the weight of the slapstick. It was a perfect bait to slap into that chum line, and he was catching fish on it really well, using it just kind of as a what we call a slap bait. And so it's been tested both as a trolling lure and as a pitch bait, and it's just excelled in all of those categories. So I'm excited to see how people do with it. There's no such thing as a perfect lure, but to me, any lure that gets a lot of bites is going to catch a lot of fish eventually. And I think that this is one of those lures that's in that meat fish category that just gets me excited. And so I'm excited that other people are excited, and I appreciate everyone's patience once again, because the production of these things is challenging, but we're working to improve that. I have another batch going out to GZ Lures on Monday, so you guys can look for those coming up soon. And yeah, just excited for the response, and some of the nice messages I'm getting from guys who are using them and catching a lot of fish. That always is my highest reward, because I can't be out there fishing every day. As a lure maker, my greatest blessing is that I may not be out there, but somewhere in the world, someone's dragging some aloha, and that to me is it's really special. So it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, seems like they're crushing them on that bait. So it'll be exciting to see how that evolves through fishing, and what big catches come from it. The slapstick now, the rigging on that is unique. What do you recommend? And what have you seen? And hookup wise too, or is it a high hookup bait, or is it kind of an aggressive explosion? And like, should guys be pulling a bigger hook or a smaller hook? I mean, what are your thoughts on just how to rig it? What do you recommend people do with this?
The way the bait is set up, and the way that Kenton's been fishing it with great success, is with a small single skirt. And so that's why the first release we've done rubber skirts on them. But I've seen a lot of guys who are fishing Flashabou on them. I think me personally, I would go to the Flashabou. I think that's a great, strong presentation. And the way the length of the regular Flashabou we get, if you kind of fold it in the middle, it's the perfect size to conceal a hook. But also on this lure, the hook is not meant to be concealed as much. It's really the tail of the bait. And so that's kind of the beauty of the slapstick, is that however you're rigging it, it should be simple. The head is representational. So that's what's going to keep the fish's interest. Whatever hook you have in there is the tail. In fact, the first versions I made didn't even have a skirt. That was something that Kenton added a skirt to it, but the originals didn't have a skirt at all. It was just a hook, and they worked as well. So I'm thinking single hook. I think the presentation that Kenton's done really well with is a single 11, but you could go down to a 10 if you felt more confident. My thing really is about a free swinging hook. I don't think you want to pin the hook on this. There might be fishermen out there that have greater success and figure some things out that work for them that might be better. But to me, just loop, single loop, free swinging. The hook is the tail. You get a lot of wiggle out of it that way. It also, because it's a long bait, will give it the freedom to stay in the water. The more you kind of make that one solid unit, you may have more jumping or kind of a stiff swimming. And the idea would be, for me, in creation of the slapstick, is something that has kind of a freedom to swim and wiggle and flop with that loose hook connection, free swinging hook, and also ideally lighter leader. And for me, uh, 150 to 300 would be the leader of my choice. um, Things that aren't going to constrain the bait, because it does look so natural. You're going to get those bites out of it just because of its natural appearance. And the other thing is, slower speeds work too. It doesn't have to be, full speed. If you're fishing a floater, you're fishing around structure like a buoy, you can come in a little slower, and you see it still has a really nice wiggle and swim. It was actually, in my original thinking, going to be a slower trolling bait.
Yeah, so for guys that pull a mixed spread of natural baits and lures, this is a great addition. There's some guys out there that are trolling at 7 knots or something, or 6, 8, or whatever, something like that. This could be a great one to add to it. And I think I even saw you mention, which I never even thought of, but guys on yachts, on sailboats.
Yeah.
This could be a really good bait for that. As you're cruising between islands or whatever. So yeah, it's exciting. It has a lot of attention, and um, it's just going to be cool to see. I like seeing different things entered into the fishing world. So it'll be fun to watch where that rolls. So yeah, is there anything else you want to add about that, or? Um,
Um, I am working on a lighter version too.
oh,
The original version is kind of a core lead, and it was another one of my early thinking on it was as a jig. So it was it had kind of multiple applications, but Kenton had a couple of the light versions that did really really well, and so I'll be making some of those, and they'll be available soon. But for fishing flat water, Kona water, or once again fishing around structure where you're trolling a little slower, I think the light version is really going to work out well. Sailboat fishing, things where you don't necessarily need that lead, you just need something that's kind of skittering back there and looks real.
yeah.